Welcome to the Co-Parenting Conversations podcast, brought to you by the Center for Divorce Education. With renowned psychologist Dr. Donald Gordon, we will delve into the complex world of co-parenting during and after divorce and separation. Join us as we explore some of the emotional, legal, and practical aspects of parental breakups, helping you navigate this transformative journey with wisdom and guidance. Whether you're currently going through a divorce, contemplating separation, or supporting a loved one in their journey, the Center for Divorce Education is here to empower you with knowledge and offer you a roadmap towards a brighter future. The information presented in this podcast is intended for educational purposes only. The presentation of this material is not intended to constitute mental health therapy or to diagnose mental health disorders. The presentation of this material is not intended to constitute legal advice. Participants are encouraged to discuss specific legal questions with a licensed attorney of their choice.
Welcome back to the Co-Parenting Conversations podcast by the Center for Divorce Education. We provide online parenting classes for divorcing and separating parents. I'm Jamie, and I'm here again with my colleague Chelsea and our executive director, Dr. Don Gordon. We've been talking a lot lately about mental health, and I will actually let Dr. Don start us off this time, since he is the expert and seems to know a lot about the issue. So Don, let's start with some of the statistics you've been talking about lately in regards to the mental health crisis in America.
This has been a big change in the last decade, that 70 to 80% of adults have significant anxiety or depression every day. Think about that. Every day they have noticeable anxiety or depression. In my lifetime, we've never seen that kind of increase. So just about everybody is dealing with something. It's good to keep that in mind when you're walking around and see other people or you're irritated, that most everybody else is dealing with their own issues too. That's an opportunity to try to show some kindness, to randomly smile at people, say hi to people, because they're dealing with unpleasant stuff. And just a little act of kindness can make a difference in their day. We also find that children's mental health has deteriorated. There's been a 40% increase in mental health disorders in the last 10 years among children, with depression and anxiety and suicide. Suicide has really increased especially among teenage girls. Now, along with that deterioration in mental health, access to treatment has really declined as the number of therapists has not kept up pace with the demand. For instance, in my area in Southern Oregon, every therapist I know doesn't have any room for any new referrals.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen that as well in a lot of the therapists that we talk with. You know, there really isn't much debate here about this being a pretty big issue. What do you think the main stressors are for people right now, or why mental health issues are becoming so common?
Well, probably for most people, one of the biggest stressors is cost of living, the price of living, your ability to pay your rent or to meet your mortgage. Your rents are increasing. Again, locally, if you're looking for a 1 or 2 bedroom house, you're going to be paying 25% more than you did 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And people's salaries have not gone up 25%. So they're being stressed. I know one teacher, and she works 2 extra jobs in order to pay for a 2-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
And she has no free time. She's spending all of her time, working. And that's going to affect her in the classroom, and it's going to affect the children's education when she's having to worry about the rent and the mortgages. And then the prices of food. We've all noticed that we go to the grocery store, we're paying more for food. And they may keep the price the same for some products, but they're decreasing the quantity.
Exactly.
So you're getting less for the same amount of money. It's getting harder for parents to put food on the table and to serve healthy food. Another source of stress is the quarantine that came along with COVID caused a lot of problems. Children's peer relationships were disrupted because they weren't going to school every day and seeing their friends, and they're staying at home. And a lot of kids fell behind significantly. And that happened in the U.S. quite a bit. And people are still trying to recover from that. Schools are seeing behavior problems that increased because of COVID and the quarantine. And when kids came back into the classroom with more behavior problems, the teachers in the schools weren't prepared to deal with those. They didn't have an increased number of supportive staff for that. The class sizes didn't go down. So it made it much harder for schools to deal with that. So that's been a big source of stress. And when kids are having trouble in school and worried about their own competence, they bring that home and that affects their behavior. As I mentioned before, there aren't enough therapists. In Oregon, there's been some large grants to increase the number of therapists who are trained so they'll be available. But that's a 2 to 4 year period of time. So since COVID, we really haven't seen an increased number of therapists move into the community. That's still another year or so away. Now, contributing factors to the stress will include stigma that children will feel if they're not doing well in school, if they're not popular with their peers. They're feeling, that they're not as liked, particularly if they're using social media a lot. You'll see online bullying, which takes a really heavy toll on kids. And again, since I mentioned before, kids' emotional literacy is not high, they're not able to talk about their feelings with their parents. So the parents are not aware that the kids are having a hard time and can't help out.
I know a lot of people who have roommates now or are living with their exes or, staying in a relationship simply because they can't afford to live alone now. So the financial stress parents have experienced, affects their children as well, because they're less likely to attune to their children's emotions and less attentive, more irritable, and that makes it more difficult on kids as well. So Chelsea, what are your thoughts on the mental health crisis?
When you have kids, a lot of other factors come into play. The price of food and childcare are very hard to handle when you're working and trying to provide for your kids. Not to mention that stress obviously makes it more difficult to focus on your children and really giving them your time and attention.
I know I have a hard time focusing when I'm stressed or, worried about things as well. So Don, what would you suggest might help with the stress or some techniques you might have to help cope with this?
Okay, well, one of the simplest and most effective ways of dealing with stress is to take a number of deep breaths. One of the ways that's effective is that focuses your attention on the present moment, which is called mindfulness. So if you're taking a breath and you're only paying attention to the sound of that breath coming in and going out of your lungs, or the feeling in your body as you're breathing in and then breathing out, and you pay attention to only that, then your stress will go down. And the more deep breaths you can take, the more your stress will go down. So everyone can do at least one deep breath where they're paying only attention to that breath. And you just pay attention to the sound going in and the sound going out, or the feeling going in and the feeling of your body as it goes out. And if you can string several of those breaths together, it'll lower your stress. The key to that is bringing your attention to the present moment. Most of our stress is caused by worrying about the past or the future, regretting something that happened in the past, or worrying about something that's going on in the future. For most of us in the present moment, it's okay. There's no crisis going on in the present moment. It's our worry that's creating the stress. So if you can bring your attention to the present moment, then that lowers your stress. Another way to do that is to pay attention to your senses, to notice what you're seeing. Look around, especially if you can see nature. Look at the trees, look at the leaves. Pay attention to your senses, the feeling of the sun on your skin. Pay attention to sounds. So anything you can do to focus on your senses will bring you into the present moment and lower your stress. And that way it's similar to taking deep breaths. Another effective technique is to think of all the things that you're grateful for. It's called a gratitude practice. You can make a list of all the things that you're grateful for. Instead of focusing on what you don't have or what you're not getting, focus instead on what you have. And that's been very effective at getting people to feel less stressed. And another technique is changing your thoughts. It's surprisingly easy to change your thoughts. Whatever you're thinking about, you can change it just like you're changing a channel on your TV set. You just switch to a different channel. A lot of us will get into repetitive thoughts, like going down a rabbit hole or worrying about the same thing over and over and over again. This tends to happen to people when you wake up at night. In the middle of the night, you start thinking about the same thing over and over again, like a worry, and it's very hard to get back to sleep. So changing your thoughts where you're like changing a channel is an effective way of lowering your stress.
Okay. Well, those all seem like really helpful techniques. And a lot of these we actually do cover in our courses as well, by the way. Any suggestions specifically for parents on how to maybe help them focus more on their children instead of stressing when they can?
The nice thing about focusing on your children that's related to mindfulness is that if you're paying attention to your children, you're paying attention to the present moment, that what they're actually doing. And you're looking at what they're doing, you're watching their play. If you're paying close attention, you can attune to their feelings. And if you're going to tune to their feelings, they're going to sense that and they're going to feel very supported. No matter what their feelings are, if it's worry, if it's embarrassment, if it's happiness, if it's laughter, tuning into that lets them know you're on the same wavelength. When we have that experience with another adult, like with a friend, and we know that a friend is really tuning into what we're feeling, we feel really supported. Your children are the same way, and they really need your support in that way. So attuning to your children means that you're putting your own stress aside, your own worries aside, and you're focusing on what they're doing. Another thing to do is to put your phone down as a parent. A lot, if you look around, you see people walking down the street, or people see people sitting at a table or even in their cars. They're staring at their screens on their phone. You need to put your phone down so you can pay attention to your children. It's sad when you see parents and kids together when they go out to dinner. The parents are on their phones and the teenagers are on their phones, and they're not talking to each other.
Right.
So that's a missed opportunity to connect and support each other. And it gets harder and harder for us to do that and for the kids to do that, because these algorithms are figuring out what it is we like, and they keep giving us those things that we like, and it becomes addictive. So working on some of these techniques with your children and showing them how to do these things, like a gratitude practice, changing your thoughts, deep breathing, that's going to help them. Children can learn to do this. Young children can learn to do this. Encourage your kids as often as possible to express their feelings and listen to them. And to be a role model, you need to learn to express your feelings as well. Now, a lot of adults have a very limited feeling vocabulary. So there's things like feeling wheels you can look up on the internet where you can see a whole range of feelings. And the more you use those other feelings and express them, the more your children will learn to do that as well.
We do thank you, Dr. Don, for being here with us, and we hope this information was helpful. Till next time.